What if one of the simplest things you do before sleep is quietly influencing whether your brain wakes up sharp or foggy? Not a pill, not a complicated supplement stack, not another expensive brain formula, just something you chew. Because here is what most people do not realize. Memory is not built only while you are awake. Memory is stabilized at night, during sleep, when your brain begins a process called consolidation. During that window, your hippocampus, the part of the brain that temporarily stores new information, starts transferring those memories into longer-term storage across the cortex. And if that night process is weak, you may feel it the next morning as forgotten names, slower recall, poor focus, or that frustrating sense that your thoughts are there, but delayed. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Memory loss is often not only a brain problem, it is frequently a metabolic problem, a circulation problem, an inflammation problem, and very often a sleep chemistry problem. That means your brain may not be underperforming because it is aging alone. It may simply be missing the raw materials required to repair itself overnight. One of the most overlooked nighttime tools for this is chewing foods that contain compounds your brain uses to build neurotransmitters and regulate sleep hormones. And one of the strongest examples is walnuts. Why walnuts? Because they deliver three things your brain uses at night: plant omega-3 fats, magnesium, and tryptophan, an amino acid your body converts into serotonin and then into melatonin, the hormone that controls sleep timing. A recent randomized trial found that daily walnut intake improved sleep quality, reduced sleep latency, and increased evening melatonin metabolites in participants, suggesting that this simple food may directly support the hormonal environment your brain needs for overnight repair. And that matters because better sleep does not just help you feel rested. It improves glymphatic drainage, the nighttime cleaning system where cerebrospinal fluid helps wash away metabolic waste from brain tissue. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your brain is a city during the day. Traffic everywhere, signals moving constantly, decisions, reactions, emotions. At night, that city needs street cleaners. If those cleaners never arrive, debris accumulates. That debris includes inflammatory proteins, oxidative waste, and in some cases, beta amyloid buildup linked to long-term cognitive decline. So when people say, "My memory is slipping," very often the first question should not be, "What brain drug do you need?" The first question should be, what is happening between dinner and sleep? Because late night blood sugar spikes, poor chewing habits, low mineral intake, and inflammatory snacking all change brain performance by morning. Interestingly, even chewing itself matters. A 2024 aging study showed that reduced chewing ability was associated with increased cognitive impairment risk, suggesting that jaw activity, circulation, and oral sensory input may influence brain health more than people assume. That means the act of chewing is not passive. It activates blood flow, stimulates cranial nerves, and signals alertness pathways in the brain. So tonight's topic is not about magic food. It is about using one specific nighttime habit to support memory physiology, the way your brain actually works. In this video, we are going to break down 6 science-backed mechanisms. Why chewing before bed changes brain signaling, how specific fats influence overnight memory repair, why sleep hormones determine recall speed, how blood sugar at night damages memory circuits, which minerals improve hippocampal function, and the exact bedtime protocol that many people get wrong. And one important point, no food restores memory in 10 days by itself. But when the right food improves sleep chemistry, lowers inflammation, and stabilizes nighttime metabolism, many people notice sharper recall surprisingly quickly. If this kind of science-first explanation is helpful, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day, focused on practical physiology you can actually use, because the goal is not simply remembering more, the goal is protecting the brain you will depend on 10 years from now. The second major insight is that many people who complain about poor memory are not dealing with a lack of information. They are dealing with a brain that never fully powers down. And when the brain does not fully power down, it cannot fully repair. This is where magnesium becomes critically important, because magnesium is one of the most powerful mineral regulators of electrical stability in the nervous system. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every thought, Every memory, every stored experience depends on neurons firing in a controlled rhythm. But those neurons do not simply turn on and off by themselves. They depend on mineral gates, and magnesium helps control one of the most important gates in the brain, the NMDA receptor. That receptor is involved in learning, memory formation, and synaptic plasticity. But if NMDA activity stays too high for too long, especially at night, neurons remain overstimulated. That overstimulation can create what many people experience as racing thoughts, shallow sleep, nighttime wakefulness, or waking up mentally tired even after enough hours in bed. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine every neuron is a room with lights connected to dimmer switches. Glutamate turns the lights on. Magnesium helps prevent the lights from becoming blindingly bright all night long. Without magnesium, the switches stay too active. The brain never enters proper darkness, and without darkness, memory filing becomes incomplete. What the research shows is that magnesium deficiency is extremely common in adults, especially in people under chronic stress, poor sleep, high sugar intake, or insulin resistance. A recent review in National Institutes of Health notes that magnesium participates in over 300 enzymatic reactions, including neurotransmitter regulation, ATP production, and sleep quality support. This matters because ATP is your brain's energy currency, and memory formation is expensive. Your brain may only represent about 2% of body weight, but it consumes roughly 20% of resting energy. That means if magnesium is low, brain efficiency drops quickly. Now here's why walnuts again become useful before bed. A small serving provides magnesium naturally, but not in isolation. It comes packaged with fat, fiber, and amino acids that slow absorption and stabilize blood sugar at the same time. That combination matters more than isolated supplementation for many people, because the goal is not simply adding magnesium. The goal is delivering magnesium without triggering metabolic disruption. A practical protocol looks like this. Chew 4 to 6 walnut halves slowly, about 1 hour before sleep. If dinner was early, pair them with 1 tablespoon of plain pumpkin seeds or 2 almonds. Why pumpkin seeds? Because they further increase magnesium density without creating glucose spikes. And importantly, avoid eating this while scrolling on your phone, watching stressful news, or answering messages, because the nervous system receives all signals together. Food cannot fully calm a brain that is still under stimulation. One recent sleep-related review published through MDPI showed that magnesium intake is associated with improved sleep efficiency and lower nighttime awakenings, particularly in older adults where mineral balance strongly affects nervous system recovery. And this is where many viewers notice something subtle. They do not suddenly feel more memory. They first notice fewer nighttime interruptions, then clearer mornings, then easier word recall, then less mental hesitation. That sequence is important because memory usually improves downstream of sleep repair, not before it. Another major mistake people make is assuming that stronger supplements always work better. But excessive magnesium, especially certain forms, can create digestive disruption that interrupts sleep. Food first delivery often works because the nervous system prefers rhythm over force, and chewing itself helps. Remember, jaw movement stimulates parasympathetic pathways. That means slow chewing before sleep becomes both nutritional input and neurological preparation. Two systems working together. This is why even people with normal diets can benefit from timing. The same nutrient taken at the wrong time often performs differently. Morning magnesium helps stress tolerance. Night magnesium helps memory recovery. Timing changes physiology. And if this is helpful so far, consider subscribing, because understanding timing often matters more than simply knowing what is healthy. Your body does not only ask what you eat, it constantly asks when, and the brain especially listens at night. Now we reach one of the most underestimated reasons memory feels weaker in the morning. Unstable blood sugar during the night. Most people assume memory problems begin when the brain is aging, but very often memory becomes unreliable because the brain spent the night managing glucose instability instead of performing deep neurological repair. Here's what's really going on inside your body. While you sleep, your brain remains highly active. It is not resting in the way most people imagine. It is reorganizing information, strengthening neural pathways, and deciding what deserves long-term storage. but that process depends on metabolic calm. If blood sugar rises sharply after late night eating, insulin rises with it. And when insulin stays elevated late into the night, the body shifts priorities. Instead of entering a fully restorative state, it begins metabolic management. That means less efficient melatonin signaling, more fragmented sleep cycles, and weaker memory consolidation. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your brain runs a night shift in a laboratory. That night shift has one important task: preserve valuable information and clear unnecessary debris. But suddenly an emergency arrives. Sugar overload. Now the entire team stops filing information and starts handling crisis control. That is exactly what happens when glucose remains unstable before sleep. The brain cannot prioritize memory if the body is busy correcting metabolic disturbance. This is why many people wake up saying, "I slept enough, but I still feel mentally slow," because duration and quality are not the same thing. A person can stay in bed for 8 hours and still fail to complete enough deep, slow-wave sleep, the stage where memory replay is strongest. What the research shows is that nighttime glucose variability is strongly associated with poorer cognitive performance and weaker sleep architecture, especially in adults with insulin resistance or prediabetes. A large population study published through PubMed found that metabolic instability and poor sleep quality often appear together, creating a feedback loop that worsens attention and recall over time. And this is why the chew before bed idea matters only if the chewing food does not trigger glucose spikes. A handful of sweet biscuits before bed may feel calming, but physiologically it creates the opposite effect. Fast carbohydrates raise glucose quickly. Insulin follows. Then blood sugar often drops during the night. That drop triggers stress hormones, especially cortisol and adrenaline. And those hormones can wake the brain at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., even when the person does not fully realize it. Sometimes they do not wake completely. They simply shift sleep stages. And memory suffers quietly. This is why walnuts work differently. They contain fat, fiber, and almost no sugar. That slows digestion. It creates stable fuel rather than metabolic turbulence. If you chew walnuts slowly before bed, the release of nutrients remains gradual. No sharp insulin surge, no late-night glucose crash. That stability protects the hormonal environment where memory is built. Now here is the practical protocol. Do not eat fruit, bread, cereal, sweet yogurt, honey, or tea with sugar within 2 hours of sleep if memory improvement is your goal. Instead, if you need something before bed, choose 4 to 6 walnut halves or 1 tablespoon pumpkin seeds or 2 walnuts plus 1 almond chew slowly for at least 30 seconds. Why does chewing time matter again? Because digestion begins in the mouth. Slow chewing activates salivary enzymes and improves nutrient signaling before food even reaches the stomach. Fast swallowing removes much of that neurological benefit. And there is another hidden effect. Slow chewing lowers sympathetic activity. In simple words, it tells your body, no emergency, safe to repair. That signal matters because stress chemistry and memory chemistry cannot dominate at the same time. One wins, the other waits. This is also why many people sabotage brain repair with healthy nighttime foods that are metabolically mistimed. A banana may be healthy, but for someone already insulin resistant, it may still raise nighttime glucose more than expected. Context matters more than labels. Healthy food at the wrong time can create the wrong hormonal message. And if this is helpful so far, pay attention to what happens after your final meal tonight, because your brain remembers what your metabolism allows it to remember, not simply what you studied, read, or tried to store. Most people think melatonin has one job: make you sleepy. But that is only the surface of what this hormone actually does. Melatonin is not merely a sleep signal, it is one of the brain's most important nighttime repair messengers. And if melatonin is weak, delayed, or blocked, memory often suffers long before people recognize the connection. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Once darkness reaches the retina, signals travel to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's internal timing center. That center then tells the pineal gland to release melatonin. But melatonin does far more than help you fall asleep. It coordinates when neurons reduce noise, when inflammation lowers, and when oxidative stress is controlled inside brain tissue. That means melatonin creates the environment where memory becomes stable. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of melatonin like the night supervisor in a hospital. Without that supervisor, the building still exists, the equipment still works, and the staff are still present, but coordination becomes poor. Lights stay on in the wrong rooms, noise remains high, tasks are delayed. That is what happens when melatonin timing is disrupted. The brain still sleeps, but it sleeps inefficiently. And inefficient sleep creates fragile memory. What the research shows is that melatonin also acts as a strong antioxidant inside the central nervous system, helping neutralize oxidative molecules that damage neurons over time. A review indexed through PubMed describes melatonin as both a circadian hormone and a neuroprotective molecule involved in mitochondrial preservation and inflammatory control. This matters because mitochondria are the power plants inside every neuron, and neurons involved in memory are highly energy dependent. If mitochondria are stressed, recall becomes slower, focus becomes weaker, mental endurance drops. Now here is where chewing before bed becomes more powerful than it sounds. Walnuts naturally contain small amounts of melatonin and also provide tryptophan, the amino acid your body uses to build serotonin first, then melatonin later. That means the food does not force melatonin. It supports the pathway. And supporting pathways is usually more sustainable than overriding them. A 2025 clinical nutrition trial found that evening walnut intake improved urinary melatonin metabolites and shortened sleep onset in healthy adults, suggesting measurable hormonal effects even from whole food intake. That explains why some people notice better recall after several nights of consistency. Not because walnuts are acting like a drug, because they help strengthen the timing of a hormone your brain already depends on. Now here's the mistake many people make. They eat correctly, but expose themselves to bright screens until sleep. That blocks the hormonal effect. Blue light from phones, tablets, and televisions suppresses melatonin release directly through retinal signaling. So even if nutrients are present, the hormonal instruction never arrives properly. The practical protocol looks like this. Chew your walnuts 60 minutes before bed, then reduce overhead bright light. If possible, avoid direct screen exposure for the final 30 minutes before sleep. Even better, use warm lighting, because food helps chemistry, but light controls timing, and timing determines whether chemistry becomes effective. Another important point, melatonin works best when insulin is calm. This is why late sugar and late fruit often interfere with the very hormone people are trying to support. The brain reads all signals together: light food, stress temperature timing. That full pattern determines whether melatonin rises strongly or weakly. And when melatonin rises correctly, memory consolidation becomes more efficient during slow wave sleep and REM cycling. This is why many people notice improved word recall first, then better focus, then fewer moments of mental hesitation. Small improvements often begin subtly, because brain repair is cumulative. Night after night, signal after signal. And if this is helpful so far, consider subscribing, because understanding how hormones truly work often removes the confusion created by quick health trends. The body rarely repairs through intensity, it repairs through rhythm. Now we move into something even more specific. Why memory often improves when the hippocampus finally receives the mineral environment it needs to function efficiently. Because memory is not stored everywhere equally. Your hippocampus acts like the temporary receiving center for new information. It decides what gets tagged, processed, and transferred into longer-term storage. And this structure is extremely sensitive to nutrient deficiency, especially at night. Here's what's really going on inside your body. The hippocampus depends on stable electrical signaling, low inflammation, and strong mitochondrial output. That means minerals are not optional background nutrients. They directly influence whether memory circuits fire cleanly or noisily. The most important nighttime combination is magnesium, zinc, and trace manganese, because together they influence neurotransmitter balance, antioxidant defense, and synaptic plasticity. Walnuts happen to deliver all three in modest but biologically useful amounts. And that matters because the brain usually responds better to repeated moderate intake than occasional large doses. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine the hippocampus as a recording studio. Every day, new audio arrives: names, conversations, directions, decisions. But if the electrical wiring inside the studio is unstable, the recording becomes distorted. The voice exists, but playback is weak. That is exactly what many people describe as memory decline. I know I heard it, but I cannot retrieve it clearly. Very often, retrieval suffers because the recording environment was poor. What the research shows is that magnesium supports synaptic density, while zinc participates in neurotransmitter signaling inside hippocampal circuits involved in learning and recall. A neuroscience review from National Institutes of Health highlights that magnesium availability influences long-term potentiation, one of the central biological mechanisms behind memory formation. Long-term potentiation simply means this: the more efficiently two neurons communicate, the easier it becomes for that pathway to strengthen. Memory is repetition made biological. But repetition only works when mineral conditions are right. Now here is why nighttime matters more than many people realize. During the day, your nervous system is under competition. Stress hormones rise, blood sugar shifts. Cortisol fluctuates, noise dominates. At night, especially during slow-wave sleep, the hippocampus gets a cleaner biochemical environment. That is why small nutritional signals before bed can produce disproportionately strong effects over time. And chewing improves delivery again, because slow chewing improves digestive signaling, which helps mineral absorption begin more effectively. This is often ignored. People focus on what they eat, but not how they eat. Yet the nervous system notices both. A practical protocol: take 4 walnut halves plus 1 teaspoon pumpkin seeds about 1 hour before sleep. Chew fully until texture softens. Do not swallow quickly. This creates slower digestive release and stronger satiety signaling. Why pumpkin seeds again? Because they raise magnesium and zinc density without sugar. That combination supports neurotransmitter quieting while avoiding insulin disruption. Now another overlooked factor: hydration, but not excessive hydration. Too much water late at night increases nighttime urination, interrupts sleep cycles, and weakens memory indirectly. So if taking this bedtime mineral combination, use only a few small sips of water if needed, not a full glass, because uninterrupted sleep cycles matter more than people assume. Recent sleep and cognition research consistently shows that even brief awakenings can reduce the continuity of hippocampal replay, the very process where recent memories are strengthened. This means many people sabotage brain repair through small habits they consider harmless: late tea, large water intake, heavy fruit, sweet snacks, phone stimulation. Each one fragments the environment the hippocampus depends on. And this is why consistency beats intensity. You do not need extreme interventions. You need repeated clean signals, night after night. The brain trusts patterns. It repairs through repetition. And when minerals arrive at the same time each evening, the nervous system begins anticipating that rhythm. That anticipation itself improves regulation, because biology loves predictability. The hippocampus especially does its best work when the body knows what comes next. Now we arrive at a mistake that often cancels out everything else. People choose the right food, the right timing, even the right minerals, but keep one habit that tells the brain it is still daytime. That habit is cognitive stimulation in the final hour before sleep. And for many people, this is the real reason memory does not improve even when nutrition improves. Because the brain does not enter repair simply because you lie down. It enters repair when signals across the nervous system become coherent. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every visual input, emotional reaction, message notification, bright screen, stressful headline, and late conversation activates cortical networks that raise alertness chemicals. The most important of these is dopamine. Dopamine is not bad. It is essential for motivation and learning. But at the wrong time, it delays shutdown. And delayed shutdown weakens the first sleep cycle, which is where memory consolidation begins most strongly. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your brain is preparing to archive a full day of information. Folders are ready. Storage systems are waiting. But someone keeps opening new files every 30 seconds. A message arrives, a video starts, A headline triggers emotion, a notification interrupts focus, the archive process keeps getting delayed. That is what screen exposure does to memory preparation. The brain keeps receiving novelty when it should be reducing input. And novelty always wins attention. This is why many people say, I feel tired, but my mind stays active. Physiologically, tired muscles and alert cortex can exist together. The body may be ready for sleep while the brain is still processing stimulation. What the research shows is that evening screen exposure suppresses melatonin, delays sleep onset, and reduces slow-wave sleep quality, especially when screens are held close to the eyes. A recent sleep review from Harvard Medical School explains that blue wavelength light in the evening shifts circadian timing and delays melatonin release, even when exposure lasts less than 1 hour. That means even healthy bedtime nutrition cannot fully compensate for contradictory light signals because the brain believes light more than intention. You may want to sleep, but biologically, light still says remain alert. Now, here is why chewing walnuts before bed can become part of a stronger protocol instead of an isolated habit. The act of chewing slowly can be used as a transition ritual, a signal, a marker, a clear message that input is ending. For example, at night, 60 minutes before bed, chew 4 to 6 walnut halves slowly, sit under softer light, no phone in hand, no fast conversation, no emotional stimulation, just slow chewing and reduced sensory load. This matters because rituals train physiology, and once repeated, the brain begins associating that sequence with shutdown. That association becomes powerful. The nervous system starts releasing calm signals before sleep even begins. Another important piece is jaw rhythm. Slow chewing activates parasympathetic pathways through trigeminal input, helping reduce heart rate variability linked to alertness. That means chewing itself becomes neurological preparation, not just eating. And here's a hidden problem many people never connect to memory: late-night problem solving. Even if there is no screen, many people mentally rehearse worries in bed. Finances, work, family issues, future decisions. The brain treats unresolved thought as active input. That also delays consolidation. So after chewing, avoid planning tomorrow. If needed, write one short note before bed. Tomorrow begins tomorrow. That sounds simple, but cognitively, it closes loops. And closed loops improve sleep entry. The brain repairs best when it senses completion, not unfinished threat. This is why some people improve memory simply by removing one habit, not adding 10 new ones, because often the brain already knows how to heal. It only needs fewer interruptions. And if this is helpful so far, consider subscribing, because health often improves fastest when you remove interference before adding complexity. The body usually does not ask for more force. It asks for clearer signals. Now let's bring everything together into something practical, because information only becomes useful when it becomes repeatable. And the reason many people fail to improve memory is not lack of knowledge. It is lack of protocol. They try one healthy habit one night, skip it the next, change timing on day 3, then expect stable neurological results. But the brain responds to rhythm, especially memory systems. Here's what's really going on inside your body. The hippocampus learns from repeated biochemical patterns. When sleep timing, nutrient timing, light exposure, and metabolic calm happen consistently, the brain begins anticipating repair. That anticipation improves efficiency. The nervous system becomes less reactive. Hormones arrive more predictably. And memory often improves because the brain finally receives the same clean signal every night. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine trying to train an orchestra where the conductor arrives at different times every evening. One night at 8 p.m., another at midnight, another night missing entirely. The musicians never synchronize. That is what inconsistent bedtime habits do to brain chemistry. But when timing becomes predictable, systems synchronize. Melatonin rises earlier, cortisol falls more smoothly, blood sugar stabilizes, and the brain enters memory repair with less resistance. So here is the exact 10-day protocol. For 10 nights, keep your final meal at least 2 to 3 hours before sleep. This matters because digestion competes with deep sleep.